today. So this is just a review of what you've learned so far when it comes to proteins. Wait. Okay, so what are proteins? So proteins are a diverse, abundant class of biomolecule. It is um, the most important of all biological compound. And like what we said during the introduction, so the word protein comes from the Greek word proteos, which means first of importance. So actually, lahat naman ng biomolecule is important. It's just that a lot of the important components of the body is actually composed of proteins. So proteins constitute about 50% of the dry weight of our cells, and unlike lipids and carbohydrates, hindi tayo nagsusstore ng protein. Okay? We store lipids in adipose tissue for future energy use. We store carbohydrates in the form of glycogen in our liver and in our muscle for future energy use, pero ang protein hindi tayo nagsusstore. Yung protein sa katawan natin have a different function, not for future energy use. So we have to consume proteins daily. So yung daily recommended intake for protein um, for adults, which you guys are actually a part of, is zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So younger people have more or have a higher recommended daily intake. Ang infant from 0 to 6 months requires 1.52 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But still, maliit kasi sila. Pero malaki pa rin kasi they're actually developing. Lumalaki sila, growing child. So they need more protein in order to um, attain the maximum amount that they could have and that the body needs for development. So as we get older, the amount of protein that we need per kilogram is actually reduced. Pero, syempre, habang lumalaki ka, bumibigat ka rin naman kasi. So, kahit bumababa yung recommended daily intake mo, is dahil dun sa timbang mo, mas malaki pa rin yung value niya kaysa nung mas maliit ka. Okay, now when you're pregnant and when you're breastfeeding, you need more protein intake because you are supplying nutrients to another being. Dahil buntis ka, syempre, you need nutrients for the fetus. Since you are lactating and you are breastfeeding, then you need to have more protein in order to give your child the amount of protein that he also needs. Now, the dietary protein usually comes from eating meat and dairy products. So, what actually makes up proteins? Proteins are composed of amino acids. So, amino acids are the monomers of protein. They are organic compounds that contain an amino group and a carboxylic acid group. So, amino acids are the building blocks of your protein. So again, ang amino acid ay composed ng COOH o yung carboxylic acid group at NH2 which is your amino group. Most amino acids in the body are alpha amino acids. Bakit? Um, the COOH carbon is carbon number 1. The carbon after carbon number 1 is called the alpha carbon. Now, because the alpha carbon is the central carbon in most amino acids, most common amino acids are classified as alpha amino acid. So there are 20 common amino acids that compose the proteins that are found in our body. And these common amino acids are usually given a three-letter code or a single letter code. So yung three-letter code nila usually are the first three letters of the name. So for alanine, it's ALA. For glycine, it's GLY. For isoleucine, it's not ISO, but it's ILE. Kasi yung leucine is LEU. Okay, so proline is PRO, valine is VAL, phenylalanine is PHE, tryptophan is TRP, tyrosine is TYR, aspartic acid is ASP, glutamic acid is GLU, arginine is ARG, histidine is HIS, lysine is LYS, serine is SER, threonine is THR, cysteine is CYS, methionine is MET, asparagine is not ASP. Instead, asparagine is ASN. Okay? And then glutamine, it's not GLU, but instead it's GLN. Bakit? Kasi yung glutamic acid is GLU. So, most amino acids are chiral molecule. Pag sinabi natin chiral molecule, it means that the central carbon is attached to 4 different groups. So, this is your central carbon. Yung nasa taas niya, hydrogen. Yung nasa left side niya, NH2. Yung nasa right side niya, COOH group. Yung nasa baba niya, methyl group. Magkakaiba yung naka-attach sa central carbon. Even here, for serine, on the left side, it's the amino group. On top, it's a hydrogen. On the right side, it's the carboxylic acid group. And at the bottom, as you can see, it's like a methanol group. Okay? So, most amino acids are chiral amino acids except one. Next, most amino acids, like what I mentioned earlier, are alpha amino acid. That means that the central carbon is an alpha carbon. So that's why most amino acids are alpha amino acids, or most common amino acids are alpha amino acid. I'll give you the exemptions later. Now, all of the amino acids found in our body are L isomers. So, how do you identify L isomers? So, an L isomer has the amino group on the left side. So, paano yon? Central carbon, nasaan yung NH2? Pag nasa right side siya, that's a D amino acid. Pag nasa left side siya, that's an L amino acid. So, most amino or all the amino acids in a body are actually L isomers. So here are some exemptions. First one, glycine is the simplest amino acid. However, it is also the only achiral amino acid. So bakit hindi chiral ang glycine? Bakit hindi considered chiral ang glycine? Yes, Miss Ildefonso.
Kasi po ma'am, yung R group po niya is H, hindi po different. 'Di ba po kapag chiral, for different side po dapat yung nandun. Yung R group po niya is H lang.
Very good. Kasi yung R group na yung glycine is hydrogen. So glycine, or the central carbon of glycine, does not have 4 different substituent. Okay, dahil hindi magkakaiba yung substituent ng glycine, hindi siya considered as chiral. Next is proline. Now, proline is not an alpha amino acid. Sinulat ko yan sa board. Proline is not an alpha amino acid. Proline is actually an amino acid. It is a secondary amine. Pero kasama kasi ang proline dun sa 20 common amino acids that compose the proteins that are found in our body. Next, amino acids are amphiprotic compounds. So, pag sinabi nating amphiprotic, meron siyang basic at meron siyang acidic component. So, yung amino group ng amino acid gives it that basic property. The carboxylic group of your amino acid gives it an acidic property. Yung side chain naman ng amino acid or yung R group niya gives it a distinct property. It's what differentiates our amino acid. Lahat kasi ng amino acid may amino group. Lahat may carboxylic group. Ang pagkakaiba ng amino acid is yung R group nila o yung side chain nila. So, because your amino acids have acidic and basic components, aqueous solutions of amino acids can act as buffers. This is the reason why proteins are included in our body buffer. Kasi your proteins are actually composed of amino acids. So, amino acids are also Zwitter ions, or also classified as Zwitter ions. So, Zwitter ions are compounds or substances that have a positive and a negative end. That means, pag nilagay mo sa tubig ang amino acid, the acid, remember, are proton donors. So, idodonate ng COOH yung isang hydrogen niya. Sinong tatanggap? Who are the proton acceptors? E di yung base mo. So, ang tatanggap ng hydrogen na idodonate ng COOH group is your nitrogen. So, your Zwitter ions are actually neutral because once the carboxylic acid had donated a proton, it will now have a negative charge. Since the amino group accepted the proton, now it will have a positive charge. So dahil ang amino acid mo ay merong negative at positive charge, your amino acids are neutral. Okay. However, that only occurs or that only happens at a specific pH. And that specific pH is known as the isoelectric point. So the isoelectric point is a pH in which your amino acids have equal positive and negative charges. And if you can observe, if you might see this, then you will notice that the isoelectric point of your amino acids are close. Ang glycine ay 5.97, ang alanine ay 6, ang valine ay 5.96. So magkakalapit yung values nila except dun sa mga outliers natin. So you have aspartic acid na nasa 2.77, you have glutamic acid na nasa 3.92, you have lysine na nasa 9.74, you have arginine na nasa 10.76, and you have histidine na nasa 7.59. So, bakit? Bakit ang layo ng values nila? Usually, nag-range lang siya sa 5 to 6. Aspartic acid and glutamic acid have an extra carboxylic acid group in their R group. Dahil doon, mas acidic sila than your usual amino acid. Lysine, arginine, and histidine have an extra amino group. They have an extra nitrogen. Dahil doon, mas basic sila than your ordinary amino acid. So peptides and proteins are formed when amino acids are joined together by amide bonds. In order to form proteins, we need to combine amino acids via peptide bond. So peptide bond yung nagko-connect sa amino acids natin. So, yung question ko last time, what makes a dipeptide? A dipeptide has two amino acids joined together by one peptide bond. Ang dipeptide, hindi pa magpa-positive sa Biuret test. For a compound, or for a polypeptide, to produce a positive result in bioretest, kailangan at least tripeptide siya or dalawang peptide bond. So polypeptides have many amino acids, whereas proteins need more than 40 amino acids. So para maging protein yung classification ng isang polypeptide, dapat 40 and above yung amino acids niya. So here are some examples of your amino acid. This is glycine, alanine, and tyrosine. So how do you form peptides? Yan. Feeling ko nag-peptide formation. Paano nga tayo nakakapag-form ng peptide? Marunong mag-form ng peptides? Siyempre sa lecture tinuturo yan eh. How do you form peptides? Guys, paano nag-form ng peptides? So a peptide bond is formed by a condensation reaction. That means that we have to remove water in order to join the two amino acids together. So there are two ways of how you form a peptide depending on your reactants. If your amino acids are in Zwitter-ion form, ibig sabihin may charges, sorry, ibig sabihin may charges, then remove an oxygen in the first amino acid, then remove two hydrogens on the second amino acid. Ma'am, bakit po kailangan magtanggal ng oxygen at hydrogen? Remember that you are removing water. Ano ba ang water? Diba water is H2O. So dun sa unang amino acid, ang tatanggalin mo ay oxygen. Sa pangalawang amino acid, ang tatanggalin mo ay dalawang hydrogen. After that, you connect the two amino acids to make the new amide bond or peptide bond. So again, how would you create the dipeptide? Ala-gly. So again, since this is in Zwitter-ion form, you need to remove the oxygen from alanine and you need to remove two hydrogens from glycine. Pagkatanggal, you draw a line to connect the two amino acids together. Now, ma'am, bakit po naka-diagonal yung orientation ng oxygen sa ng hydrogen? Siyempre kasi tinakpan ko lang yan ng shape. So, hindi ko siya naikot. Pero pwede na naman natin ikot. Okay? So, if your amino acid is uncharged, meaning COOH and H2, then you need to remove an OH group or an oxygen and a hydrogen on the first amino acid and then remove a hydrogen from the second amino acid. Connect the two amino acids together to form your peptide bond. So, ulitin natin. Kung ang form ng amino acid mo ay uncharged, dun sa unang amino acid, OH group ang tatanggalin. Sa second amino acid, hydrogen ang tatanggalin. Iko-connect mo together to form your peptide bond. Okay? So, yung seat work, hindi ko na yung papakita. Okay lang yan. For the post, I think check-in activity. Wait, I'll just show you. Okay, question. Sa lecture ba, nag-formation of amino acids or formation of peptide bonds? Ulit, sa lecture ba, nag-formation ng peptide bonds? Yung totoo lang. Okay. So, kasi, The reason I'm asking is because yung first check-in activity nyo for the laboratory is to draw one lang naman, tripeptide. So, ipapasa nyo to sa akin sa Monday. Indicate. And, kailangan nyo pa ba ng bond paper? Sige. Mas madali. Short bond paper o... Hindi. Baka tayo gumana ng space bar ko. Ay, gumana ng space bar ko. In a short bond paper, ayusin ko siya mamaya. Ayaw gumana ng text, ng space bar ko. Tapos on paper, June, Monday. Hindi pala everyone. Wait lang, ayusin ko lang. Siyempre, isa Tuesday. Yan. So, draw the tripeptide, glyphenylala. So, again, the submission is on paper, short bond paper. Yan. So, wala na naman kayo makikitang submission button. So, baka sabihin niyo, ma'am, wala pong submission button. Okay, now your amino acids can be classified in a number of ways. However, the first, and usually, we classify it according to polarity. So we have non-polar amino acids, we have polar uncharged or neutral amino acids, then we have your polar acidic amino acids and polar basic amino acids. Syempre, yung polar acidic natin, kagaya ng sabi ko kanina, they have an extra carboxylic group. That's why they have lower isoelectric point compared to your other amino acids. Your polar basic amino acids have an extra amino group or an extra nitrogen that gives it a more basic property compared to your other amino acids. Ma'am, kailangan po ba kabisaduhin? Hindi naman. So, now we have our essential amino acids. Yung essential amino acids, kailangan mas familiar kayo. So, essential amino acids are amino acids that cannot be produced by the body. May tanong ako, ilan ang essential amino acids? How many essential amino acids do we have? Yes, Miss Panessa. Okay. The reason I'm asking is because the number of essential amino acid differs. Sa ibang reference material, there's 10. Sa iba, merong 9. So, here are the 10 essential amino acids. Yung arginine may highlight kasi sa ibang reference material, hindi daw siya essential. Okay. So, isa-isahin ko lang, very fast lang. Though sa lecture, medyo mas detailed yung differentiation ko sa kanila. So, unang-una is phenylalanine. So, phenylalanine is an essential amino acid and it is necessary if your diet does not have enough tyrosine. Yan. Importante kasi ang phenylalanine para makagawa ka ng tyrosine. Ang phenylalanine nakakatulong para makapag-form ka ng hormones, kagaya ng epinephrine or adrenaline, dopamine, saka yung mga thyroid hormones natin. Yan. So later, we'll talk about the other hormones as we go along. But yung thyroid hormone natin regulates your metabolism. Yan. Um, epinephrine is also known as adrenaline. It's a fight or flight response. Yan. Ano pa? It also helps with increasing your heart rate, your blood sugar. Yan. It helps relax the smooth muscles of your airway. So that's what it does. The next essential amino acid, ang phenylalanine nakakatulong din sa depression. Next, you have valine. So, ang valine naman, ang usual na, or not usual, one of its function is to actually help regulate our blood sugar level. It also helps with normal growth and development. Ang valine hindi napaprocess ng liver natin. Kung hindi, siya ay nasustore or siya ay, nasustore or pumapasok sa ating muscle. So, ang valine ay para sa muscle mass. Valine helps with stress management. Next, you have tryptophan. Now, tryptophan is important in producing serotonin and melatonin, which improves your sleep quality. Ang tryptophan nakakatulong din para mag-prevent ang cholesterol sa katawan natin. And also, it is necessary in the manufacture of niacin. Yan, kailangan natin ng tryptophan para makagawa ng niacin. Next is threonine. Now, threonine is, not threonine. Tama. Next is threonine. Baliktad pala ako. Threonine supports normal growth and development. Kailangan natin ng threonine para makagawa tayo ng serine and glycine. Yan. So, it helps process your fatty acids and prevents liver failure. Yan. Next is isoleucine. Ang isoleucine ay importante for muscle development and repair. Yan. So kapag nag-exercise ka, nag-gym ka, when you're putting your body in strenuous physical exercise, importante yung isoleucine kasi tinutulungan niya para maka-recover yung katawan mo from that strenuous physical exercise. Next is methionine. Methionine is one of the sulfur-containing amino acid. Dalawa lang naman ang amino acid na may sulfur. Yung isa ay cysteine, yung pangalawa ay methionine. So methionine contains sulfur, and methionine is important in processing fat or removing fat. Yan. Methionine also protects your liver in cases or prevents liver damage in acetaminophen poisoning. Pag sinabi nating acetaminophen, ang acetaminophen ay ginagamit natin pang-treat ng pain. Ang acetaminophen, mas kilala natin sa tawag na paracetamol. Yan. So, we tend to take paracetamol whenever we encounter mild pain or when we feel feverish. Masakit ulo, merong period cramps, masakit ipin, masakit katawan, we take paracetamol. We take acetaminophen. However, yung ibang tao, dahil nga mild ang effect ng paracetamol, minsan nagdodoble-doble silang ng inom. Minsan hindi nila alam yung iniinom pala nila is the same thing. So that takes a toll in your liver. I think I discussed this during the first day. So dahil doon, mas nagiging prone yung liver mo to damage. So para ma-prevent natin yon, importante yung function or importante na meron kang methionine. Kasi tinutulungan niya yung liver mo o pinoprotektahan niya rather yung liver mo from liver damage. Next, ang methionine nakakatulong rin sa wound healing. Yan. So, wound healing, and it also produces your amino acid cysteine. Cysteine is the only amino acid that contains an SH group or the thiol group. Kaya yung lead acetate test, nagpa-positive siya kapag merong cysteine. Kasi cysteine lang yung amino acid na may SH group. O siya lang yung common amino acid na may SH group. Parehas ang methionine at ang cysteine na merong detoxification function. Kasi nga, ang trabaho nga nila ay protektahan yung liver natin. So, parehas silang merong detoxification function. And then next, you have histidine. Now, ang histidine is essential para sa mga infants to ensure the regulation of growth and natural development. Importante din ang histidine para sa production ng histamine. Para saan nga ang histamine? Histamine. Para saan ang histamine? Where have you heard histamine? Yan, correct. So histamine is released by the body as an allergic response, correct? It's an inflammatory response. It causes itching, runny nose, sneezing, which are symptoms of allergy. So, importante ang histamine para makapag-produce tayo ng histamine. Importante rin ang histidine sa isa pang letter H, which is hemoglobin. Kailangan ng histidine para makapag-form tayo ng hemoglobin. Isa pa, importante din ng histidine para makapag-produce ng glutamate. Now, glutamate plays an important role in learning and memory. So, histidine is also important in the detoxification of heavy metals, and it regulates our blood pH, and it helps with wound healing. Yan. So, maraming function ng histidine. Next, you have arginine. So again, arginine, kapag 9 lang yung listahan ng essential amino acid, ang tinatanggal nila is yung arginine. Arginine is a semi-essential amino acid. The body is capable of producing arginine. E di ba pag sinabi nating essential, dapat ito yung mga substances na kailangan ng katawan natin pero hindi natin kayang i-produce. So, arginine can be produced by the body. However, mabagal ang production ng arginine sa katawan. So, arginine is important in releasing the growth hormone and insulin. It also improves our circulation. Ang arginine, importante sa treatment ng heart disease and high blood pressure. Ang arginine nakakatulong din para ma-prevent ang common colds. Yan. However, ang arginine ay hindi na po-produce ng mga preterm infant. So, yung mga premature pinanganak, hindi sila nakakapag-synthesize ng arginine. So, for those, arginine is an essential amino acid kasi hindi nila yun nagagawa. Okay? So, arginine is a semi-essential amino acid, but preterm infants or premature infants cannot synthesize or cannot produce arginine. Next, you have lysine. Now, lysine is for a healthy immune system. Madalas tong nilalagay sa mga vitamins natin kasi meron tong antiviral property. So, nakakatulong para mag-prevent ng mga sakit that are caused by viruses. So, ang lysine nakakatulong din sa pag-form ng muscle tissue. It also helps with growth. Yan, kaya nga nasa vitamins so nakakapagpatangkad to. Nakakapagpababa din siya ng cholesterol at nakakatulong para sa paggawa ng collagen. Lastly, you have leucine. So leucine is important because it supports muscle building and decreases muscle wasting. Pero ang pinaka-highlight ng leucine is that it lowers cholesterol and LDL levels. Nakakatulong siya para pababain yung LDL levels natin o yung bad cholesterol sa katawan. Thus, nare-reduce yung risk natin for developing atherosclerosis and other cardiovascular disorders. So, now let's talk about limiting amino acids. Now, limiting amino acids are amino acids that are in the shortest supply in relation to need. So, limiting amino acids are usually found in incomplete proteins. At pag sinabi nating incomplete proteins, these are actually proteins that are found in plant food sources and gelatin. So, example, ang rice has very low lysine, pero mataas ang methionine ng rice. Beans, on the other hand, have very low methionine levels and cysteine levels, pero mataas ang lysine level niya. So, in order to get a complete protein source, you need to combine rice and beans because they complement each other. They are what we call as a complementary protein. So, kung kanin, kailangan mong lagyan ng ulam. If you are a meat eater, if you consume egg, if you consume dairy products, wala tayong problema. However, for those who are vegetarians, for those who are vegan, sila yung kailangan mag-focus on making sure that they're getting the complete protein source. Kasi, kung kumakain ka ng karne, umiinom ka ng gatas, kumakain ka ng itlog, you get the complete amino acids. You get all the amino acids that you need in the correct proportion. Plant food sources are sometimes low in some amino acids. That's why they are classified as an incomplete protein. At dahil doon, kailangan alam mo kung ano yung pwede mong pagsamahin para makuha mo yung complete amino acid na kailangan mo. So, para saan ang protein sa katawan natin? What are the functions of proteins? The first one is for structure. So, proteins provide strength to our cells and tissue. They are the chief constituents of our skin, our bones, our hair, and nails. So, examples, you have keratin. So, keratin is found on the epithelial cells, which line the inside and outside the surfaces of the body. Keratin helps form tissues of the hair, nails, and the outer layer of the skin. Next, you have collagen. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. It is used to make connective tissue. It is a major component of our bone, our skin, our muscle, our tendons, and cartilage. Um, Your collagen is composed of three chains that are wound together in a tight triple helix. Kung ang DNA natin, dalawa lang ang chain, ang collagen natin ay tatlo ang chain niya. So that structure helps make our tissue strong and resilient. Next is elastin. From the name itself, elastin um, gives elasticity yan, to our skin and other types of tissues. So elastin is an essential or a key extracellular matrix protein that is critical for the elasticity, resilience of many vertebrate tissues, including our arteries, our lung, our ligament, our tendon, our skin, and our elastic cartilage. So, yung elastin natin nakakatulong para mag-stretch and para mag-contract yung ating mga tissue. Okay? Next, proteins are also catalysts. So, proteins play a role in catalysis. So, we have what we call enzymes that are actually substances that speed up biochemical reactions in the body, and they do that by lowering the activation energy. So, examples niyan, medyo nabanggit na natin to. You have your amylase, you have your lipase, you have your protease. Hindi ko na siya i-explain further kasi yung next module number 9, is all about enzymes. Next is for movement. Ito yung mas familiar tayo. So, muscles are made of protein molecules. So, example is myosin and actin. And also, tropomyosin and troponin. So, ang actin, yan, wait, yan. So, you have actin and myosin. Myosin is the thick filament. Actin is the thin filament. Myosin is a fibrous protein. It's composed of a head and a tail. It's a motor protein, and it generates the force in muscle contraction. Actin, on the other hand, is a spherical protein, and it is composed of two chains. So each actin has a myosin binding site kung saan kumakabit yung myosin para mag-contract yung muscle natin. Now, we have what we also call as tropomyosin and troponin. So, ang trabaho ng tropomyosin is to bind or to block the myosin binding sites on actin molecule. Pag hindi kailangan mag-contract ng muscle natin, hinaharangan ng tropomyosin yung binding site. Okay? So, tinatakpan niya yun para hindi mag-contract yung muscle mo. Yung troponin naman, on the other hand, is also a globular protein, and its job is to bind to tropomyosin and helps position tropomyosin on the actin molecule. So, ang trabaho naman ng troponin ay um, idikit, yan, ang tropomyosin sa actin. So again, yung tropomyosin, siya yung taga-harang, siya yung taga-block, siya yung taga-bara. Para kumabit siya dun sa binding site ng actin, kailangan ng troponin. Pag walang tropomyosin dun sa binding site ng actin, kakabit dun yung myosin natin para mag-contract yung muscle natin. Next, proteins also play a role in the transport of other substances. Example, you have hemoglobin, you have serum albumin, and you have your lipoproteins. Okay? So, ano ba ang hemoglobin? So, hemoglobin carries oxygen to our lungs. Alam natin na ang hemoglobin is for the transport of oxygen. Hemoglobin is composed of 4 subunits. 1, 2, 3, 4. And each subunit has a heme group and an iron. Okay? Bawat chain ay merong heme group. Okay? So each globulin contains heme and it is responsible for the color of blood, and it maintains the shape of our RBC. So, sa adult, ang hemoglobin is composed of 2 alpha chain, hindi ko sure kung nabanggit sa lecture, 2 alpha chain at 2 beta chain. Sa mga fetus at babies, instead of having a beta chain, wala silang beta. Instead, meron silang 2 gamma. Habang tumatanda tayo, habang lumalaki yung baby, napapalitan yung gamma chain ng beta chain. So, include ko lang din. The iron component or the heme group is the one that carries the oxygen. It's the one that attracts oxygen. However, if you are exposed to carbon monoxide, then your hemoglobin would bind to carbon monoxide kasi mas mataas ang affinity ng iron sa carbon monoxide kaysa sa oxygen. So, problema natin is carbon monoxide has no smell. Carbon monoxide has no odor, it's odorless, it has no color because it's a gas. So, hindi mo mapapansin if you're actually exposed to carbon monoxide. So, let's say, hindi maayos ang ventilation, ang sa kotse, yan, sa parking, natutulog ka, tapos meron palang carbon monoxide leak sa kotse mo, then you're actually exposed to carbon monoxide. And that would cause the following symptoms. You feel like your head is aching, you feel dizzy, tapos parang nasusuka ka because you're actually inhaling carbon monoxide. Ang carbon monoxide, yung affinity niya sa oxygen is 200 times stronger. So kapag meron ng dalang carbon monoxide yung hemoglobin mo, hindi na siya makakapagdala ng oxygen kasi puno siya eh. May laman siya sa loob. Paano siya magdadala ng oxygen? So you're actually killing your cells from the inside. You're suffocating from the inside because you don't have enough oxygen. Okay? Next is serum albumin. Now, mamaya, mababanggit ko to, meron tayong tatlong types ng albumin. Ang isa doon ay yung serum albumin, which is the largest protein component of our blood. So, importante ang serum albumin for the regulation of plasma volume and tissue fluid balance. Importante ang serum albumin for antioxidant activities and anticoagulant effects of the blood. Next, your proteins also act as hormones. So, hormones do not perform any obvious chemical transformation, but they regulate the ability of other proteins to carry out physiological functions. So, examples are the following. Umpisahan natin sa erythropoietin. So, ang erythropoietin is produced by the kidneys in response to a low oxygen environment. So, kung mababa ang oxygen level, ang gagawin ng katawan natin, magre-release siya ng EPO or erythropoietin. Yung kidneys ang magre-release ng erythropoietin. Yung erythropoietin would send a signal to your bone marrow to create more red blood cells. So, once you have more RBC, then you would have increased oxygen supply. Pag marami ka ng oxygen supply, edi titigil na yung production ng EPO. So, importante din ang EPO or erythropoietin in protecting your RBC from destruction. So, EPO or doping increases an athlete's performance ability and endurance. Ang doping ay bawal sa mga professional and even amateur competitions. Bakit? So, kapag naglalaro ka, okay, let's say like cycling or basketball, hihingalin ka. The longer you stay, the longer you keep on playing, eventually, there'll be a point wherein you'll be running out of breath. Hihingalin ka, syempre napapagod ka. Pero, kung nag-inject ka ng EPO, yan, magkakaroon ka ng continuous supply ng RBC, ng bagong RBC, para bigyan ka ng oxygen. So, hindi ka hihingalin. Okay? Kaya nag-i-increase yung endurance. Kaya nag-i-improve yung performance. Kasi hindi ka nagsuslow down. Athletes, people would slow down because we're running out of breath. But if you continually produce RBC, then hindi ka hihingalin. Kasi parating mataas yung supply ng oxygen sa katawan mo kasi gawa ka ng gawa ng RBC. Kaya bawal ang doping sa professional and even amateur athletic competitions. Next is oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is also known as the love hormone. So, this is a neurotransmitter. It is produced by the hypothalamus. It is released in response to the activation of sensory nerves during labor, breastfeeding, sexual activity, positive interaction between adults, and between humans and animals. So, kaya tinatawag na love hormone yung oxytocin kasi nare-release siya with physical contact. It's released in response to slow, or not slow, low intensity stimulation of the skin, kagaya ng touching, okay, or stroking, or hugging. Yan. So, um, oxytocin is associated with improving our well-being, and it is important in reducing the cortisol that we produce. Cortisol kasi is a stress hormone. Oxytocin counteracts the effect of cortisol. So, ito yung reason kung bakit kapag nakadorm ka, parang stress na pagod ka na sa life. Pero oras na umuwi ka, oras na, kunwari, mahug mo yung mommy mo, makita mo yung aso mo dun sa bahay nyo, natatanggal lahat ng pagod mo. Literally. Because your body is producing oxytocin. And the release of oxytocin lowers your cortisol level, which gives you that stressful feeling. So, kaya importante yung oxytocin, or importante yung healthy relationship with another being. Yan. So, kagaya nga ng sabi ko, that interaction is important with the release of oxytocin. So, kapag LDR ka, syempre dahil hindi kayo nagkikita, you don't really produce a lot of oxytocin because it's released by a touch, light touch. Yan. Nare-release siya with physical contact. So, dahil wala namang physical contact, kapag LDR ka, hindi ganon ka-taas, or hindi siya nakakapag-improve ng oxytocin levels mo. Okay? Oxytocin can also be released by a hand-to-mouth movement, such as eating. Yan. Kaya yung iba, okay, there are people who don't like being alone. There are people who needs to have somebody with them. There are people who need to be in a relationship all the time because they like that feeling. Magaan sa pakiramdam, masarap sa pakiramdam kasi parating mataas yung oxytocin level. And when a relationship ends, or when they can't be with a person for a long time, those people tend to compensate by eating because eating also releases oxytocin. Pero yung nare-release ng oxytocin while eating is not as um, consistent as that when having a good and a good physical relationship. So, ang nangyayari, kain ka ng kain kasi every time you eat, it gives you that good feeling. Okay? Yung iba naman, inom kasi yun din, hand to mouth movement. Yan. Yun kasi yung nadudulot nun. Pero again, temporary yung effects niya. During the height of the pandemic, when people were asked to stay at home and avoid or do physical distancing, karamihan sa mga tao bumaba ang oxytocin level. So para tumaas yung level of oxytocin, a lot of people actually start adopting pets. A lot of people became pet owners kasi they also get that oxytocin release when you have a good relationship with your pet. Yan. So kahit walang boyfriend, kung may aso, kung may pusa, nakakapag-release pa rin yun ng oxytocin whenever you interact with them. Yan. Next is somatotropin. Somatotropin is a growth hormone. It is secreted by the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. So it stimulates the growth of essentially all the tissues in the body. And it also keeps your blood glucose levels within set levels. So, importante din ang somatotropin because it decreases the rate of glucose uptake and metabolism. So, sa liver natin, it encourages glycogen breakdown and release of glucose in the blood. So, it also helps mobilize your fat from the fat storage sites for the transport to cells, thus increasing the levels of fatty acid in the body. Next is vasopressin. Now, vasopressin is an antidiuretic hormone. It is also produced in the hypothalamus. It helps control your blood pressure by acting on kidneys and blood vessels and helps conserve body water by reducing loss of water in the urine. Ang vasopressin, tinatawag nating antidiuretic hormone kasi pag sinabi nating diuretic, it is a substance that increases your urine production. So, ang ginagawa ng vasopressin ay pinipigilan niya uh, yung paggawa ng too much urine ng katawan natin, thus increasing our water retention. Next is melatonin. Now, melatonin is a sleep hormone. So, melatonin initiates and maintains sleep. It is produced in response to darkness. That means ang melatonin ay gumagana kapag madilim. So, kung ikaw ay nagse-cellphone bago matulog, pine-prevent niya yung production ng melatonin, which would give you that quality of sleep that you need in order to replenish the energy for your body. So, ang melatonin sleeps, or rather, helps with our sleep-wake cycle. The melatonin actually works on the circadian rhythm or the circadian calendar or yung body clock na tinatawag natin. Meron tayo talagang literal na may body clock tayo. So, ang melatonin production natin ay nagsa-start at yan. Nagsa-start saan na lang ng gabi. Yan, dito. 9 o'clock. Dapat, pag mga bandang 9 o'clock na, medyo pa-relax ka na. Nag-wind down ka na dapat. Nakahiga ka na, or nagre-ready ka na para matulog. Kasi nagsa-start na yung production natin ng melatonin. Ang melatonin natin improves our immune system. It is an antioxidant. So, meron namang melatonin na nare-release sa umaga. Pero yung melatonin na napoproduce sa gabi is 10 times higher. So, yung melatonin natin, tumitigil siya at 7:30 in the morning. So, kung ikaw ay magpupuyat at matutulog ng alas 5 ng umaga, you only have 2.5 hours of good melatonin production. So, mas importante pa din para makatulong. Yan. Para makatulong sa pagtanggal ng sakit ng katawan mo, yung melatonin na napoproduce natin sa gabi kaysa sa umaga. Kasi yung iba, matutulog sila ng 5 a.m., gigising sila ng mga iba pa rin yung tulog sa gabi kaysa yung tulog sa umaga. Mas nakakatanggal siya ng pagod kasi nga yung production natin ng melatonin. Some sleeping pills contain melatonin kasi it helps with sleeping. But yeah, like what I said, kung hindi, kunwari nakadorm ka, syempre nag-aaral pa yung kadormmate mo, hindi nyo mapatay yung ilaw or maliwanag kasi yung street lights sa labas. So, use an eye mask. Okay? Para parang total darkness pa din. Kahit may nakabukas na ilaw sa paligid mo. Okay? Next is dopamine. So dopamine is a neurohormone. It is produced also by the hypothalamus and it provides an intense feeling of reward. It's associated with pleasure and addiction. So low dopamine levels are also associated with diseases such as Parkinson's, restless leg syndrome, and ADHD. So ang dopamine is more associated with reward. So, it gives us pleasure. Yan. So, kung nag-shopping ka, kung nakain mo yung gusto mong kainin, kunwari parang nagkikrave ako ng pancake ngayong umaga. So, hanap ako ng pancake. Pag nakita ko yung pancake na gusto ko, tas masarap siya, tas masaya ka, pag kumakain ka, parang naghaham-ham ka pa, yan, sumasayaw-sayaw ka pa ng konti, nagre-release ng dopamine yung katawan mo. Yan. Ang dopamine is also associated with reinforcement. Yan. So, kunwari, you felt good. Masarap kasi yung lasa ng kinain mo. O order ka pa uli. Babalik ka doon. Okay? Babalik ka doon. Bibilin mo uli yon kasi okay yon. Okay? Kasi hindi ganon kataas or hindi ganon ka-consistent, hindi ganon katagal yung effect ng dopamine. That's why this is associated with addiction. For you to get that feeling, that good feeling that you get with dopamine release, uulitin mo, nang uulitin mo, nang uulitin mo. That's why it leads to addiction. This is the feeling that people get when they take drugs. Yan, when they take cocaine or heroin, that could lead to addiction. Sa umpisa parang hindi kasi stress lang ako. No, because you would crave for that feeling over and over and over again. Okay? So, ang dopamine, hindi naman siya, it's not really a bad thing. Dopamine improves your learning and attention. It improves your mood, syempre. It is a feel-good hormone. It also improves your movement and your heart rate. Kaya ginagamit siyang treatment for Parkinson's. Yan, kasi nakakapag-improve siya ng movement. Next is serotonin. Now, serotonin is a neurohormone and it influences learning, memory, happiness, as well as regulating body temperature, sleep, sexual behavior, and hunger. Maraming role ang serotonin sa katawan natin. It influences learning, nakakatulong siya para mag-improve yung memory mo, nakakatulong din ang melatonin para ma-relieve yung feeling of anxiety. Sorry. So, lack of enough serotonin is thought to play a role in depression, anxiety, mania, and other health conditions. So, ang serotonin sa katawan natin is usually mostly found in our gut. So, about 90% of serotonin is found in the cells lining our gastrointestinal tract. It is released in the blood and absorbed by our platelets. So, 10% lang ng serotonin ang napoproduce ng brain natin. Mostly, napoproduce siya ng intestine natin. Importante ang serotonin sa katawan natin. This is more of a well-being. People tend to compare dopamine and serotonin because they both give you that good feeling. However, serotonin is more associated with your overall well-being. So, kung nag-yoga ka, nagme-meditate ka, kung you have a good family relationship, you have a good set of friends, then being with them helps release your serotonin. Dopamine is a short-term, feel-good hormone. It's pleasure. Okay? So, magkaiba. Serotonin is more of happiness. Dopamine is more of pleasure. It's short-term. Another function of hormone is for protection. So when a protein from an outside source or some other foreign substance called an antigen enters the body makes its own protein called antibodies to counteract the foreign protein. Example is immunoglobulin, fibrinogen, and thrombin. We'll talk more about this pagdating natin sa blood. Okay? Module number 11, blood. Next is for storage. Now, proteins provide a reservoir of essential nutrients. They also provide sufficient nitrogen in times of need. Example, first, you have ferritin. Ferritin, dun pa lang sa pangalan niya may Fe. Ibig sabihin for iron. Okay? So, it stores iron in a soluble, non-toxic form. So low levels of ferritin can lead to iron deficiency anemia. High levels naman of ferritin kapag sobra-sobra can damage your joint, your heart, your liver, and your pancreas. So, ang iron deficiency nanggagaling sa poor diet or blood loss or kung meron ka talagang inborn na iron deficiency. Meron kang hemoglobin complex. So, for adults, ang low iron levels usually ay nangyayari kung meron kang bleeding, syempre sa katawan, or kung very heavy yung period mo, yan, or when you're pregnant and breastfeeding. Um, yung namang increase ng iron sa katawan natin. Ang iron kasi, um, medyo mahirap siyang ma-excrete ng katawan natin. So, we slowly build up excess iron throughout the years. Okay? So, nadadagdagan or dumadami, tumataas, yun pala. Tumataas yung iron sa katawan natin over the years. So, pagdating ng mga 30s, 40s, medyo mapi-feel mo na kung meron kang excess iron sa katawan mo. Masakit yung joint mo, masakit yung tiyan mo, yan, kasi nag-accumulate yung iron sa katawan natin. Kapag malakas kang uminom, yan, nag-i-increase ng absorption kasi ng iron ang heavy alcohol use. Yan. Next is ovalbumin. This is the second type of albumin. Kanina, nag-serum albumin na tayo. Ito na yung pangalawa. This is egg white. Okay, so this is major egg white protein synthesized in the hence oviduct. It is responsible for egg white formation. This accounts for about 54% of the total proteins found in egg albumin. So, next we have casein. Casein is an important protein component of bovine milk. This is produced in the mammary gland and it accounts for approximately 80% of the milk's total nitrogen. So, casein is a milk protein. And casein is a very rich source of essential amino acids with the only possible exemption of cysteine. Yan. Walang cysteine ang casein. Next is myoglobin. Now, myoglobin serves as an intracellular storage site for oxygen. The primary function of myoglobin is to supply oxygen to the muscle. So, how do we classify proteins? First, proteins can be classified according to structure. We have the primary structure, meron tayong secondary, meron tayong tertiary, at meron tayong quaternary. Ang primary structure is just a linear sequence of amino acids connected by peptide bonds. The secondary structure is a repetitive conformation of the protein backbone connected by peptide bonds and hydrogen bonds. Sa secondary structure, meron tayong tatlong types. Meron tayong alpha helix, beta pleated, and random coil. Ulitin ko, ang primary structure ay amino acid na pinagkabit-kabit ng peptide bond. Ang secondary structure is connected by peptide bond and hydrogen bonds. Pagdating natin sa tertiary structure, this is a complete three-dimensional arrangement of the atoms in a protein held together by peptide bonds, hydrogen bonds, disulfide bonds, and salt bridges. So, yung mga non-polar side chain are stabilized by your van der Waals or your London dispersion force na nasa gitna, nasa loob, asa na siya, yan. Then your polar functional groups form hydrogen bonds. Yan. Then your amino acids with a charged side chain are attracted by electrostatic action. And your disulfide bonds can form covalent bonds to stabilize the tertiary structure. Yung may mga sulfur, yan. They form disulfide bonds. Lastly, you have the quaternary structure. Now, this is a spatial relationship and interaction between subunits in a protein that has more than one polypeptide chain, kagaya ng hemoglobin. Each polypeptide chain is called a subunit. This is held together by peptide bonds, hydrogen bonds, disulfide bonds, and salt bridges. So explain ko lang ng very fast. Amino acid sequence is a primary structure. It's held together by peptide bonds. For the secondary structure, dahil complicated na yung structure natin at pahaba ng pahaba, yung amino acid chain, nagkakaroon tayo ng folding. At pag nagkaroon ng folding, syempre mag interact yung dalawang parallel chain. And they interact with the form of your hydrogen bonds. That forms your secondary structure. Habang humahaba yung secondary structure, nagkakaroon tayo ng tertiary structure. Tertiary structure is already a complete three-dimensional shape of your polypeptide chain. So, bukod sa peptide bond at hydrogen bond, meron pa tayong salt bridges, meron pa tayong disulfide bonds. Yan, marami ng bonds ang involved sa tertiary structure. Ngayon, kapag more than one yung tertiary structure mo, ang tawag na doon ay quaternary structure. Again, na-discuss na to sa lecture, kaya mabilis lang yung discussion natin. Next, you have classification of proteins according to shape. Ang dami kong binigay na examples kanina kasi may kinalaman yun dito. Now, we have two types. You have fibrous and then you have globular. So fibrous are long and narrow like fibers, and they are mainly for structural purposes. They have repetitive amino acid sequences, and they are less sensitive to changes in pH and temperature. Fibrous protein, are insoluble to water. Examples ng fibrous protein. Okay, collagen, keratin, elastin. Kung ang function ng protein ay para sa structure, classified yun under fibrous. Doon naman sa movement, alin doon ang fibrous? Yung actin ba o yung myosin? Yung myosin. That is a fibrous protein. Okay? Next is globular proteins. Now, globular is round and spherical, usually used for non-structural purposes. It is composed of irregular amino acid sequences and more sensitive to changes in pH and temperature. Globular proteins are more or less soluble in water. Sa pangalan, usually makikita kasi like hemoglobin, immunoglobulin, yan. Myoglobin, may globe sa pangalan. Ibig sabihin, globular yung protein. Pero, karamihan sa protein, like for transport, your hormones, your enzymes, are actually globular proteins. Kaya ako, maraming example na binigay kanina. Okay? I think you noticed this sa exam. I usually give, like, feeling ko, madali pag matching type. At kasama dun sa matching type, yan, pwede yan, to classify them according to their shape. Is it a fibrous or globular protein? Or it could be match the function to the protein. Next, according to composition, we have simple proteins and we have conjugated proteins, kagaya ng lipids. Pag sinabi nating simple, it's only composed of amino acids. These are also called homoproteins. So under simple proteins, you have your albumins, your globulins, your glutenins, your albuminoids, your histones, your protamines, your collagen, and your keratin. Now, under conjugated protein, these are proteins that contain a protein and a non-protein part. Example is glycoprotein, carbohydrates at protein. You have your phosphoprotein, which has a phosphate group in protein. You have your lipoprotein, which is lipid and protein. And you have your chromoprotein, which is a pigment and protein. Example ng chromoprotein, chlorophyll. Example, hemoglobin. Merong colored component at merong protein component. Lastly, we have derived proteins. Derived proteins are proteins derived from simple or conjugated means by physical or chemical means. So nutritional basis, nabanggit ko na kanina, we have complete proteins and incomplete proteins. Pag sinabing complete protein, they contain all essential amino acids in the correct proportion. Animal and fish products are classified as complete proteins. Incomplete proteins, on the other hand, are proteins that lack one or more essential amino acid in the correct proportion. So pag plant yung source, Yan, madalas incomplete protein. At para magkaroon ka ng complete protein source, you need to combine 2 or more incomplete proteins to create a complete protein. And we call them complementary protein. So proteins undergo denaturation. Denaturation is the loss of the secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structure of a protein by a chemical or a physical agent. Ulitin ko, ang nasisira during denaturation is the secondary, the tertiary, and the quaternary structure of a protein. Ang primary structure ay hindi nag-undergo ng denaturation. So what are the different factors that cause denaturation? You have heat, you have detergents, you have acids and bases, you have salts, you have reducing agents, you have heavy metal ions, you have alcohol, and you have mechanical stress. Ito, pag-uusapan natin sa next slide, which is yung sa laboratory. Lastly, you have hydrolysis. Kung ang primary structure ay hindi nag-undergo ng denaturation, ang primary structure ay nag-undergo ng hydrolysis. The primary structure of a protein is cleaved or broken by the addition of water. So ulitin ko, para masira ang primary structure, kailangan mo ng tubig. It undergoes hydrolysis. Primary structure does not undergo denaturation. The denaturation breaks your secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structure. Question? Question? Question, guys? May question ba? Nandiyan pa ba kayo? Okay, sige. Now, sa laboratory, tatlo ang paulit-ulit nating ginamit na sample. You have albumin, you have casein, and then you have gelatin. Now, like what I said, meron tayong tatlong types ng albumin. So, albumin is water-soluble, heat-coagulable protein. What does that mean? Nade-dissolve ang albumin sa tubig. Pag ininit ang albumin, it solidifies or nagko-coagulate. And albumin is present in egg white in the form of albumin or egg albumin. It's present in milk, which is lactalbumin, and it's present in serum, which is serum albumin. So, ang egg albumin at lactalbumin are actually conjugated proteins. Your serum albumin is a simple protein. It's only composed of amino acids. Next is gelatin. Now, gelatin is derived from collagen. It is insoluble in cold water but soluble in hot water. Ang gelatin ay hindi nade-dissolve sa cold water. Alam yan ng gumagawa ng gelatin. Kaya yung mahilig kumain ng jello, alam na hindi mo pwedeng i-dissolve ang gelatin pag malamig ang tubig. Mas mabilis siyang matutunaw kung mainit ang tubig. So, gelatin is a non-heat coagulable protein. Ibig sabihin, ang gelatin ay namumuo kapag mas mababa ang temperature or mas malamig. Okay? Gelatin is rich in proline, hydroxyproline, glycine, and hydroxylysine. Pero, walang tryptophan ang gelatin. Pakitandaan, ang gelatin ay walang tryptophan. Thus, gelatin is an incomplete protein. Usually sa hospital, they serve gelatin as a dessert. Not really as a dessert only, but because it is a means of introducing protein in the diet. Pero hindi kasi mahirap i-digest, hindi kasi matigas ang gelatin. So madali siyang tunawin ng katawan natin. So kaya nagsiserve ng gelatin sa ospital, hindi dahil kuripot sila pambili ng dessert, kung hindi dahil mayaman siya sa protein, pero hindi siya mahirap tunawin. Okay? Next is casein. So casein is the chief protein of milk. Yan. Nalaman na natin kanina, approximately 80% of bovine milk. Yan. So it is a phosphoprotein, meaning it's a conjugated protein. It is insoluble in water, but soluble in dilute acids and alkali. Casein is also a non-heat coagulable protein. Casein is rich in most of the essential amino acid except cysteine. Ang casein ay walang cysteine. So, the first test that we did is biuret test. So again, biuret test is a general test for identification of proteins. It is positive for all compounds containing more than one peptide bond. Kailangan tripeptide para mag-positive sa biuret test. The positive result of biuret test is violet. Biuret, violet. So, sa biuret test, ang ginagamit natin ay glycine, you have protein hydrolysate, you have egg albumin, you have gelatin, and then you have antibiotic. Di na tayo nakapag-produce ng antibiotic, mahirap na kasi bumili. So, yan. So, ang antibiotic, hindi yan mag-violet. Ang albumin mag-violet yan. Ang gelatin violet yan, medyo magulo lang sa likod. Ang protein hydrolysate, hindi nag-violet. At ang glycine, hindi nag-violet. Bakit? Okay, gelatin would be violet because it contains peptide bonds. It's a protein. Albumin would be violet because it contains peptide bonds. Ang glycine ay hindi magva-violet kasi single amino acid, walang peptide bond. Ang protein hydrolysate, if it had undergone complete hydrolysis, walang peptide bonds. Kasi remember, ano ba ang pinuputol ng hydrolysis? Ang pinuputol ng hydrolysis are peptide bonds. Thus, in a protein hydrolysate, in a completely hydrolyzed protein, it contains free amino acids. Kaya hindi siya nagpa-positive. Next is casein. Casein would be violet. Bakit? Kasi may peptide bonds. Ma'am, hindi po tayo nag-casein. Alam ko. Sinasabi ko lang na kung ginawa natin sa casein, violet din siya. Next is ninhydrin test. So, ninhydrin is a test for the presence of alpha amino acids in protein. The positive result is a blue, bluish-purple, blue-black color called Ruhrmann's purple. So, sa ninhydrin test, yan. Ay, yung gelatin na napakahirap gawing dark violet, pero yung class ko kahapon, nakuha na namin yung dark violet, finally. So you have egg albumin, you have gelatin, you have alanine, you have protein hydrolysate, lahat yan may alpha amino acid, kaya positive silang lahat. Ang magne-negative lang sa ninhydrin test is proline. Eh, wala namang sample ng proline. So egg albumin contains alpha amino acid, positive. So, lahat silang may alpha amino acid, magpo-positive, except proline kasi hindi siya alpha amino acid. Next is xanthoproteic test na hindi natin ginawa. So, this is a test for aromatic amino acids. I know when I was writing the different tests, ang una kong nilagay sa Hopkins goal is aromatic amino acids. And then I realized na hindi na nga pala ginagawa yung xanthoproteic test. Xanthoproteic test, yung test for aromatic amino acid. Ang positive result dito is a yellow to red-orange color. So bakit hindi na namin siya ginagawa? Hindi kasi makuha ang positive result ng mga estudyante. Hindi namin ma-achieve yung positive result. So, we stopped doing this muna in the meantime. And wala kasing nitric acid na kailangan for xanthoproteic test. So, explain ko na lang. If your amino acid contains a benzene ring, magpa-positive siya sa xanthoproteic test. So, egg albumin, bakit positive? Kasi complete. Ang clue guys, ang egg albumin positive sa lahat. Kasi complete protein siya. Lahat ng amino acid meron siya. So, magpa-positive siya. Next, tyrosine, merong benzene ring. Nakikita nyo naman. Dahil doon, aromatic amino acid yan. Magpa-positive yan, red-orange. Ang alanine, walang benzene ring. So, colorless siya. Wala siyang aromatic amino acid. Ang protein hydrolysate, because it contains a lot of amino acid, magpa-positive yan. Phenylalanine, dahil may benzene ring siya, magpa-positive yan. Ang gelatin, light orange, kasi meron din siyang phenylalanine na tyrosine. Ang cysteine, magpo-positive yan kasi meron din siyang aromatic amino acids. Next is Millen's test. Millen's test is a test for phenolic compounds or compounds that contain phenol. Isa lang ang amino acid na merong phenol group, tyrosine. Okay? The positive result is a red precipitate or a red solution. So, sa Millen's test, yan, ang phenol kasi is a very it's a toxic. It is a very natin parang abrasive compound. So we don't give high concentrations of phenol for heating. Kaya 1% lang yung phenol natin. So instead of producing like a really red color, a bright red color, it's more of like an orangey color. Okay? For albumin, since albumin is a complete protein, wait lang, yan. Magpo-positive talaga yon. Tapos, yan, to. Yan. So I think this time we used a higher concentration phenol to get the result. Tyrosine would be red. Yan. Actually, yung tyrosine, kahit hindi pa iniinit, nagre-red na siya talaga. Tapos, ang casein, meron siyang parang lumulutang lang, a small portion, na hindi nga lahat ng groups nakukuha to. Albumin din also has. Kaya for them, I give plus points kasi mahirap nga siyang makuha. For protein hydrolysate, sometimes it doesn't contain. So, okay lang yun. So, protein hydrolysate should have, yan, kasi halo-halong amino acid yun, dapat may tyrosine doon. Alanine, colorless, kasi wala siyang tyrosine. Tyrosine would be red, even without heating. Kasi it's a test for your phenol group. Phenol would be positive, kasi obviously, test for phenol yun. Albumin would produce a red solution or red precipitate because of the presence of tyrosine. And then gelatin, kung gagamitin natin siya as a test compound, would produce slight color, even cysteine. Wala palang cysteine dito. I'll add that later. Next is Hopkins Skull test. Hopkins Skull is a test for the presence of tryptophan, the only amino acid containing an indole group. So the positive result for Hopkins Skull test is a violet ring. I know hindi ganyang katingkad na violet, pero meron. Yan. Yan na yung best namin. So, for albumin, yan, positive, meron yan. Kasi again, albumin is a complete protein. It contains all amino acids. Cysteine would have a violet ring. Gelatin, wala, kasi walang tryptophan ang gelatin. Siyempre, ang tryptophan ay positive kasi meron siyang indole group. At yung protein hydrolysate, merong tryptophan. So, as you can see, yung protein hydrolysate may very faint purple ring. Ang gelatin, wala. Ang egg albumin, ayan. Tapos ang tryptophan, ayun. Yung casein nila, very vague. Pero again, mahirap nga siyang makuha. Parang kahapon na class namin, pa konti-konti lang. Parang pa isa-isa lang. I think sina Mar, what they did is we added a lot of sulfuric acid to get the result. So, hopefully, yung ipapasa nyo sa aking pictures would be better than this one. Pero kung mas okay pa rin to, hindi ko pa rin papalitan. Lastly, you have the SH test or the lead acetate test. So, this is a test for the presence of cysteine or cystine. So, the positive result is a black or brown precipitate. Again, dito sa lead acetate test, ang chine-check natin is yung presence ng SH group. So, common amino acid, ang may SH group lang ay cysteine. So, ang sample natin dito is egg albumin, casein, and then tyrosine. Hindi ko sure kung sa atin gumamit tayo ng kahapon kasi pinagamit ko sila ng protein hydrolysate. So, 4 na yung sample namin kahapon. So, yung protein hydrolysate is tama ba? Protein hydrolysate. Oo, tama, protein hydrolysate. Nag-color din siya. So, albumin, dahil complete protein yan, positive. Tyrosine would be colorless kasi wala siyang SH group. Cysteine would be colorless kasi walang cysteine ang casein. Gelatin would have traces of sulfur amino acids. And methionine would be colorless kasi wala siyang SH group. Question. Okay, ulitin ko. Pag nagpasa tayo ng picture sa laboratory, focus on the result because I want to remember what the results were in your group. Kung ano yung nakuha nyo. Kasi yun yung chinechekan ko. Okay? Lastly, we have Module 8, which is what we're going to do on Monday. Sa Monday, una, may quiz tayo. Pangalawa, mag-experiment tayo. Maiksi lang kasing experiment. So first, these are factors of protein denaturation. First is reaction with heat. So heating would cause reversible or irreversible denaturation. If it's gentle heating, that causes reversible denaturation. Example niyan is yun, kapag nagpa-plancha ka ng buhok or ng damit, di ba? You change or you alter the shape. However, at the end of the day, it will go back to its original shape or original conformation. Kung nagkulot ka kaninang umaga, at the end of the day, pag naligo ka, babalik yung original shape ng buhok mo because that's gentle heating. However, vigorous heating, such as cooking, denatures the protein irreversibly by disrupting several types of bonds. So, syempre, kung mas mataas na temperature yung gagamitin mo, mas magiging irreversible yung effect ng heat. So, for albumin, gelatin, and casein, kapag ininit natin sila sa water bath, hindi magpo-produce ng coagulate ang gelatin at ang casein. Bakit? Kasi pareha silang non-heat coagulable protein. Ang mamumuo lang ay albumin kasi heat coagulable ang albumin. And so, itong gagawin natin sa Monday. So, as you can see, yung casein natin, imbes na mag-curdle siya or mamuo siya, medyo nag-clear. Yung albumin naman, medyo nagka-cloudy siya and eventually, kung mataas yung percentage ng albumin, maluluto. Para kang nagluluto ng egg. Next is reaction with heavy metals. Now, heavy metals like mercury chloride, silver nitrate, and lead can precipitate protein. So, it denatures protein irreversibly by disrupting your salt bridges and your disulfide bonds. Sa lab, ang gagamitin natin ay lead acetate. Okay, dati ginagamit namin ay silver nitrate at mercury chloride. However, hindi ko sure kung may silver nitrate at saka mercury chloride, pero sure akong may lead acetate. So, ang i-observe lang naman natin dito is yung parang coagulation o yung pag-form ng cloudy solution. Bakit hindi naman talaga siya nagko-coagulate or namumuo? Kasi yung concentration ng heavy metal natin hindi ganun kataas. Next is reaction with alkaloidal reagents. So alkaloidal reagents form insoluble compounds with protein. So these reagents combine with the positively charged amino groups of the protein to disrupt your ionic bonds. They denature the protein irreversibly by disrupting your salt bridges and your disulfide bonds. Ang gagamitin natin is picric acid, tannic acid, and TCA. Ang kulay ng picric acid is yellow. Hindi lang siya very obvious, pero yellow yan. So, kapag naglagay ka ng picric acid sa albumin, magpo-produce ka rin ng yellow coagulate. Ang color ng tannic acid is light brown, tan. Kaya, kapag naglagay ka ng ng albumin, magpo-produce siya ng light brown coagulate. Lastly, you have your TCA or trichloroacetic acid, which is colorless. So kapag nilagyan mo siya ng albumin, it produces a white coagulate. So picric acid is yellow, tannic acid is cream, and then trichloroacetic acid is white. Yan, mas maayos daw. So yellow, white, and then cream, light brown, and then this is supposed to be white. Next, you have reaction with concentrated acid. Your acids and your bases can disrupt hydrogen bonds, salt bridges, causing irreversible denaturation. So proteins are coagulated by strong acids like concentrated hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, and nitric acid. So, ang nitric acid, ang kulay niyan ay yellow. So, pag nilagyan mo siya ng albumin, mag-yellow coagulate siya. Pag dinagdagan mo pa ng sobrang nitric acid, eventually, madidissolve mo yung coagulate to produce a yellow solution. Hydrochloric acid is a colorless solution. So, if you add albumin, it would produce white coagulates. Pero pag nilagyan mo ng excess acid o dinagdagan mo ng dinagdagan ng acid, eventually madidissolve niya yung white coagulate to produce a colorless solution. So, with 20 drops of HCl, nakapag-produce siya ng white coagulates. Tapos, nung naman dinagdagan niya ng sobrang or ng 60 drops pa ng HCl, na-dissolve niya yung coagulants. For organic solvent, ang ginamit namin ay, I think, acetone. Yan. Or ethyl alcohol. Tama, acetone. Lastly, we have reactions with alcohol. So, alcohol coagulates all types of proteins except prolamines. So, alcohol irreversibly denatures by forming hydrogen bonds that compete with naturally occurring hydrogen bonds in the protein. So, 95% alcohol would produce excessive amounts of white coagulate. 70% alcohol would produce moderate amount. 40% would produce a small coagulate. Ang pinaka-effective na disinfectant or antiseptic would be 70%. Because 70% alcohol would be enough to penetrate the bacteria and kill them. Yung 95%, oo nga, mataas yung percentage ng alcohol. Pero ang masisira niya lang ay yung surface protein ng bacteria. Buhay pa rin yung bacteria, hindi siya mamamatay. Yung 40% naman ng ethanol, masyadong matubig para makapatay ng bacteria. So, yan. Questions. So, yan ang gagawin natin sa Monday. Parang madami, pero hindi. Kasi add lang yun. Wala nang masyadong heating doon, bukod doon sa unang-una. Question? Question. So, yung discussion natin today is for module 7 and 8. Parehas kasing proteins yung 7 at 8. May question ba? Okay, ako meron. Okay. Let's try to answer the following. Practice tayo para hindi tayo magkagulatan sa quiz. First, alkaloidal reagents form insoluble compounds with protein. Albumin reacts with tannic acid to produce, is it A, pink coagulate? Is it B, a tan coagulate? Is it C, a yellow coagulate? Or is it D, a white coagulate? Ano ang napoproduce? Will I be posting the PowerPoint? Maybe tomorrow. Kasi may klase pa ako ng Tuesday. May bukas pa ako. Tomorrow po-post ko siya. Ano ang sagot sa number 1? Ano ang kulay? Yes, Miss Vanessa.
Tan coagulate.
Yes. Okay. Tannic acid, tan. Okay? Or light brown. Tan is light brown. Next is casein is a non-heat coagulable protein. It is soluble in, is it hot water, alcohol, cold water, or sodium hydroxide? Ang casein, ay non-heat coagulable. It is soluble in hot water, alcohol, cold water, or sodium hydroxide. Yes, Miss Mikoko.
D, ma'am. Sodium hydroxide po.
Correct. Kasi casein is soluble in dilute alkali and dilute acid. Ibig sabihin, diluted na acid or diluted na base. Ang base lang naman dyan is sodium hydroxide. Wala namang acid sa given. So, soluble siya sa letter D. That's correct. Next, which of the following is not classified as a protein? Is it fibrinogen? Is it steroid? Is it hemoglobin? Or is it LDL? Alin sa apat ang hindi protein? Yes, Miss Vanessa.
D po, steroid.
Okay. Mami, hindi ko po alam kung ano yung fibrinogen. O di sige. Pero alam mo yung steroid. Alam mo yung hemoglobin, alam mo rin yung LDL. Ang steroid ay isang kolesterol. At ang kolesterol ay hindi isang protein. So, ang sagot dyan ay letter B. Ma'am, yung LDL po, di ba, lipoprotein yon. So, meaning may protein component. Fibrinogen is an enzyme. It's a protein. Number 4, the test for the presence of tyrosine, the only amino acid containing a phenol group. Is it biuret? Is it Milans? Yes, Mr. De La Rosa.
Letter D po, melons.
Okay. Again, Milans test is a test for phenol group. It's a test for tyrosine. Number 5. Which of the following sample will not produce a positive result in ninhydrin test? Para saan ba yung ninhydrin? Sino ang hindi magpa-positive? Is it A, albumin? Is it B, alanine? Is it C, proline? Or is it D, glycine? Yes, Pronda.
Proline po, miss.
Okay, proline. Proline is not an alpha amino acid. Ninhydrin test is a test for alpha amino acid. Number 6, which of the following sample will not produce a positive result in xanthoproteic test? Is it A, tyrosine? Is it B, phenylalanine? Is it C, histidine? Or is it D, tryptophan? Unang tanong, para saan ang xanthoproteic test? Yes, Miss Beron.
C po, histidine.
Okay. Ang xanthoproteic test ay test for aromatic amino acid o yung presence ng benzene ring. Doon sa 4 na choices, histidine lang ang walang benzene ring o yung parang hexagon na may 3 double bond. Okay, so kaya ang sagot is letter C, histidine. Next. Which of the following sample will not produce a positive result to Hopkins-Cole test? Sino ang hindi magpo-positive sa Hopkins-Cole test? Is it A, albumin, B, tryptophan, C, cis-U-tripala, or D, gelatin? Yes, Miss Kapili.
Gelatin, miss.
Very good. Again, ang gelatin ay walang tryptophan. Ang Hopkins-Cole test ay para sa tryptophan. Ang albumin, lahat ng amino acid meron siya. Siyempre yung letter B, tryptophan, positive yon. Yung letter C, meron ding tryptophan dun sa chain ng amino acid. So, positive pa rin yun. Number 8, which of the following sample will not give or not produce a positive result to Millan's test? Is it A, albumin? Is it B, phenol? Is it C, tyrosine? Or is it D, alanine? Sino ang hindi magpo-produce? Yes, Mr. De La Rosa.
Letter D po, alanine.
Very good. Ang Millan's test ay test for phenol. Okay? Ang albumin, ang only amino acid na merong phenol ay tyrosine. So, positive yung B, positive yung C. Ang albumin, meron siya ng lahat ng amino acid, so positive pa rin siya. Ang negative dito ay letter D, which is alanine. Okay? So, ganun magsagot ng quiz, ha? Number 9, which of the following sample will not give a positive result to SH test or sulfhydryl test or the lead acetate test? Is it B, is it A, albumin? Is it B, tyrosine? Is it C, gelatin? Or is it D, cysteine? Sino ang walang SH group? Sino ang walang SH group? Isa lang ang common na amino acid na merong SH group at cysteine yun. Ang albumin, lahat ng amino acid meron siya. So, for sure, positive yun. Ang tyrosine, ano nga ang R group niya? Ang R group ng tyrosine ay phenol. Diba? So, wala rin siyang SH group. Ang gelatin, lahat naman ng amino acid meron siya. Puwera sa tryptophan. Hindi naman tryptophan ang tinatanong. So, positive din siya. Ang cysteine obviously has an SH group, so positive. So, ang sagot sa number 9 ay letter B, tyrosine. Okay? Number 10. This is a non-heat coagulable protein. Okay. Oh, sige, Miss Beron. Hindi ko natatapusin.
Gelatin.
Anong
A
letter?
po.
Okay. So this is a non-heat coagulable protein that is insoluble in cold water but soluble in hot water. The answer is letter A, gelatin. Okay. So totoo na to? May question pa? Questions? Okay. Again, sino ang hindi nakasama sa attendance? Abulensya, nandito na. Kapili, nandito na. Dado.
Ma'am, andito na po.
Okay. De Leon, Rani.
Ma'am, present po.
Okay. Montalvo. Paloma, nandito na.
Yes po, ma'am.
Reyes, nandito na. Tanya Moore, parang nandito na.
Yun na po.
Wikoko rin, nandito na. Okay. Wait. Ma'am, quiz po sa Monday, 7 and 8. Yes. So, parang yung ginawa natin today, pero mas marami. So, ipopost ko yung PowerPoint presentation pagkatapos ng klase ko bukas. Ang tapos ng klase ko, maybe around 5. Yan. Okay, so anong concern sa last experiment?
Ma'am, ano lang po. Kasi po kami yung last na group na natapos sa, kaya ulit yun. Sa Hopkins po. So, wala pong firma yung amin. Pwede naman po ipasa yan, diba?
Yes. Okay lang.
Okay po, ma'am. Thank you po.
Okay, so kung wala na tayong concern, ipapublish ko yung ibang task today para gawin nyo sila ng Friday. Tapos, Monday, may quiz tayo. Tapos sa Monday, pwedeng magdala kayo ng egg white. Kahit isang itlog na egg white lang. Ang problema kasi natin, gusto ko kasing makuha nyo or makita nyo yung result ng coagulation or yung result ng ibang test. Kasi mas mabilis mag-curdle talaga. So, kung magko-collect kayo ng egg white, Sunday pa lang, ilagay nyo sa ref. Okay? Huwag nyong iwanan at room temperature kasi mapapanis yun. So, magdala ng egg white. Huwag naman kayo magdala ng itlog. Sayang yung yolk eh. So, pwede bang egg white na lang yung dadalihin nyo? Kahit isang itlog lang pwede. Kung dalawa yung gusto yung dalhin, pwede mas okay. Pero kung isa, okay na ako doon. Okay? Nagkakaintindihan? Per group, even 1 to 2 eggs. Or egg white of 1 to 2 eggs. Not the yolk, just the egg white. Okay? So, if there are no more questions, I'm gonna let you go. Have a good day, everyone. Yung may mga nawawalang task ng midterms, pakikompleto. Oo. Yes. Egg white lang. Yung may mga nawawalang task ha, kasi baka matapos na yung grade. Baka lang. Baka lang sipagin ako mag-check na. Okay? Yung mga habol sa mga picture na walang picture, yung mga sinubmit na lab reports, paki-upload na yung mga pictures. Okay? Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you po.
Bye.